Oh, good morning. My name is Reverend Victoria Bomberry, and I'm the Minister of Transformation at the Riverside Center for Spiritual Living in Riverside, California. And that's in Southern California. And this morning I've already been out with my dog, and it's so beautiful. It's just cool and wonderful for a walk. And I'm here filling in for Rochelle McCrary this morning. She can't be here today, and I'm with you. So it's such a thrill always for me to be here on this wonderful program, the Science of Mind and Spirit Lecture Series. And we're here every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mountain Time in this spot. So please join us. We just love having you, and I love seeing the questions that pop up and the comments that pop up. And Robert's going to be taking care of that. Reverend Robert is going to be taking care of that, and he'll be compiling them. And I just encourage you to participate in this discussion. And let us know your name and where you're coming in from. That's always also wonderful to see. And I see Wayne Baldwin from Calgary. Welcome, Wayne. Wonderful to see you this morning. So, Diego Reyes. Oh, great. That is so fantastic. So it's good to see you. So I love knowing who's out there and who's tuning in. And I know we're going to have a great discussion this morning because we are going to continue in our beautiful Science of Mind textbook. And last week, Tracy Brown talked about faith. And, you know, that is one of those things that we've talked about forever, you know, as humans. You know, what is faith? What does it look like? And you know, just trying to come up with a definition of it. And, you know, and what it means to us in our lives. And Tracy did just an incredible talk about faith. And she reminded us that we always have 100% faith. And that's all the time.
LISN.com and enter promo code EXPERT for $25 off with a minimum purchase of $100. That's brooklinen.com, promo code EXPERT. We are supported by Honey. Now,
my phone just went off, and I'm so sorry. I put it on Do Not Disturb, and it started talking to me. Technology, I was telling Robert, technology is...
yeah, you started shopping, online shopping.
Technology does crazy things sometimes, so that's what's happening with my phone. It's doing crazy things this morning, so please excuse me. That was kind of funny. And I guess maybe I was demonstrating something here this morning when I was talking about faith. You know, we have 100% faith all the time, and that fear is misplaced faith. And one of my fears is that technology is going to fail me. I always, you know, I think that all the time. I think, oh, you know, I have to be on top of this or technology is going to fail me. But, you know, we don't have to live in fear like that. You know, that's a silly example of this. But here we are, you know, we're looking at faith last week, and we're moving into chapter 11, mental and spiritual treatment. And this is really the core of our teachings. You know, we have done a lot of study in this area about what works and how mental and spiritual treatment plays a role in our life, and how we can use this. Well, I'm going to call it a technology because it is. It's something that has been discovered by human beings. It's you know, it's not something we created. It is something that we have discovered in how things work. So let's just dive right in here and look at what treatment is. And this is right at the beginning of the chapter if you want to follow along. in your textbook. And religious science uses the term treatment because it focuses on what human beings can do to align with spirit. We use spiritual mind treatment in order to do this. Ernest Holmes says, effective mental treatment is propelled by a consciousness of love and a realization that the creative spirit is always at work. The practitioner does not feel that he must compel the force to work. It is the nature of the creative power to take form, and it is the nature of humanity to use it. So it's already there, right? It's always at work. And, we are the microcosm to that macrocosm that is always at work. And it's natural to us. It is absolutely natural to us. And that quote is from our textbook on page 163. And, throughout this talk this morning, this discussion this morning, I'm going to be referring to the 2018 documentary, The Biggest Little Farm. And I had a chance to watch that this week. And, I'd heard so much about it. And, I finally had a chance to watch it. And I was just in awe of all of the lessons that are contained in that documentary. There's powerful examples throughout the film of this very point that creative spirit is always at work. There's no need to compel it. It is its nature to work. So this documentary was made in 2018, like I said, but in 2010, a married couple, Molly and John Chester, decided to leave their old lives behind and purchase an old abandoned farm. And it was 200 acres. That's a good size for a farm, 200 acres. And they christened it Apricot Lane Farms. And the couple spends the next 7 years transforming this abandoned farm that is, the pictures of it when they first move in, it's a mess. It's arid. It's dry. It just looks a mess. And looking at it, you might think that there could never be anything that would grow in this place. It just looks dismal, and you wonder, oh my gosh, what are they going to do, to revive this farm? And, this week we celebrated Earth Day. So this was a perfect thing to look at the examples from our beautiful earth of this creative force that's always in play. So they find a mentor who helps them lay the foundation they need. And, they have a lot of frustrating moments, a lot of challenges. And, a lot of people would have just thrown in the towel, right, with some of the things that were coming up, or they would have given up their dream of creating a farm that is based on having life, all of life working together to make beautiful, healthy plants, animals, and food for the market, right? So they want to have, they want to be happy and harmonious, in their life, and they want to see that in their farm as well. So I love this film because all of these kinds of frustrations that we have in life, there's lots of contours to everyone's life, and I like that about life. I like that we have all these contours And we don't necessarily have to look at them as good or bad, or, this is my joyous, joyous time, and this is my horrible, horrible time. We just have to accept life on its terms, and it brings all kinds of things. And we always have the opportunity to learn something about ourselves and about our neighbors, about the world around us, and ultimately about the cosmos and how things work, and how spirit is always working in and through us, and in and through everything. And that's what I love about this film. So the purpose of treatment is to let me give a quote, Ernest Holmes. Mental or spiritual treatment should bring into actual manifestation the health and happiness which are humankind's normal and divine heritage. Such healing includes the emancipation of the mind from every form of bondage through a new concept of God, which causes the heart to beat with joy and gladness. This healing power is a consciousness of the unity of life and the spiritual nature of all being. And this is on page 163. Now, this quote reverberates through my whole being. It really does. Many of us started our lives with an image of God as a big man in the sky. So Ernest Holmes is asking us to find a new concept of God. And I think, a lot of people have been drawn to religious science because there is a new concept of God that is emerging through religious science. It's not that image of the God as the big man in the sky, maybe sitting on a throne or striking people with lightning, who have crossed him, and yes, him, right? So the image that many of us have grown up with, or maybe have kind of resting in the back of our mind somewhere, is an angry, punishing God. So this is just sort of one of those leftovers from old thinking, right? This idea of this punishing God. And it's very prevalent in the United States. Back in the 18th century, there was something called the Great Awakening. And this punishing God was definitely alive and well in the 18th century. And the American theologian Jonathan Edwards shaped much of Americans' Protestant theology in the 18th century and beyond, and a lot of that is still with us. And he delivered a sermon called Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And it has been used as an example of fire and brimstone preaching, right? And we've all heard of that, fire and brimstone, and all the things that come with that. However, Jonathan Edwards himself was kind of a quiet guy, and he delivered his sermons, in a thoughtful manner. But he was delivering this message that he himself had been given, by his forebears, and that he, kind of revived and breathed life into in this Great Awakening. And, in the 19th century, there was also this second Great Awakening that had the same sorts of elements within it. Now, our movement, the New Thought movement, came up in the 19th century, and it had a different idea, and a different conceptualization of God and human beings. And that conceptualization did not cast human beings as these wretched sinners. it was a new way of thinking, a new concept of God that that brought us to this kind of relationship that actually reflected the theology of Jesus, right? That love reigns supreme. God is loving, God is kind. There's all of these things, that come up in the teachings of Jesus if we want to look at Christianity and what was going on back in the 19th century. So this was kind of brought up again, this new concept of God, this concept that, yes, we are in constant relationship with God. There's no separation. And I want to use a term that, I think that might get at some of this as well, and that is alienation from God. Because one of the things that the film brings up, The Biggest Little Farm, is an alienation from the land that that they have, they find themselves on. And there were a series of farmers who were practicing a different kind of farming. And they did monoculture. They used all kinds of things to control everything. So that gets back at that willing things to happen, just from this human will, willing things to happen. And this couple, Molly and John, decided to have a new conceptualization and an actual relationship with their farm and all of the beings that are a part of that farm. So, I think these things go hand in hand, because anytime that we are alienated from God, and that we use the term separation, anytime we're alienated from one another, right, we have problems. Anytime we're alienated from the earth, we have problems. So what we know is that there is a unity of life. This is one of the core teachings of the New Thought movement. There is a unity of life, and God is life. So this new concept that we start to see being talked about in the 19th century, is brought to the fore by Ernest Holmes. This new concept of God. God is no longer this separate thing that is actually made in a human image, right? And when I was kind of searching around for images of God, I was really pleased to see that image has started to fade in my searches. That wasn't the first thing that came up. And I know the algorithms probably boot me into, certain things, but at the same time, what happens is that we can kind of get a measure of how we're thinking about God by what people are searching and what they click on, right? So I think this gives us a kind of an idea that something is changing, because those images were no longer predominantly about this big man in the sky. The images were incredibly beautiful, and the images were patterns of light. And this morning I was commenting on the screensaver that Reverend Robert has. And, it was just all these stars, and it was really beautiful, just, and then an image of someone, a human being, standing on a pyramid peering at a planet. So it was really, really beautiful. And, this is the kind of thing that gives us a sense of how we're relating to creation at this point. It's not, it's different, it's changing. And I think that's good news for us. And there were also these spiral galaxies, just swirling lights and just that, oh, just the mystery and the majesty of all of these things, that we've been able to see uh, over the years with the new technologies that we have. And there were clouds, there were seas, there were all kinds of things that were coming up as images of the divine. And of course, there were images of Krishna, Ganesh, Jesus, and some things that I found interesting were large hands and feet. And, that's sort of hearkening back to that idea of this anthropomorphic God that we put on a throne, right? And, they're all existing side by side right now. And yet we are reconceptualizing our idea of God to be in relationship, in true relationship with that beloved mystery of life. And we can know a lot about life. We're finding out more and more, and that's what's exciting. And yet there's always that mystery because God is that ineffable force that is working throughout creation. So this is all to say that in treatment we are coming up. We are actually having a new relationship with God, a new concept of God that that is like, it's just like, this is so close. It is so incredible, and it is life affirming and life giving to us. So the way of treatment, we I mentioned that looking at this farm, John and Molly were, they could have just thrown up their hands and walked away because it looked so grim. It looked like it would be impossible to bring this farm back to life. But the way of treatment, we're talking about, how we treat in religious science. And Ernest Holmes tells us, in treatment, we turn entirely away from the condition because as long as we look at it, we cannot overcome it. By thinking upon a condition, we tend to animate it with the life of our thought, and thereby it is perpetuated and magnified. Treatment is the science of inducing within mind concept, acceptances, and realizations of peace, poise, power, plenty, health, happiness, and success, or whatever the particular need may be. And that's on page 164. And that wasteland, that this farm was, they, like I said, they could have just focused on the condition, that condition, and what the appearances of that farm were. And one of the things that was striking to me is that the irrigation pond was completely dry, and it just looked so sad. And all of the trees were either dead or dying. All of the fruit trees were either dead or dying. And there was I couldn't see any life in the soil. It looked so dead and barren, right? Fortunately, they found a mentor, and I'm going to call him a practitioner because, in treatment, we're turning away from the condition, right? And we are seeing the truth. And their practitioner, mentor, his name was Alan. And he knew the truth about how to work with nature rather than against her. So that's what we're talking about. We're working with God, not against God. We are working with God. And there's examples throughout life that give us this sense of, the immensity of life everlasting, right? Of the grand design of creation. So when they saw wasteland, because when they looked out, that's what it was. He saw the potentiality that was present. He assured them that in 7 years they would have a healthy farm if they let biodiversity. And I think that that's a scientific term that is important and maybe a little bit off-putting. I'm not sure, but I love the term biodiversity. That idea of life. And I'm going to call it life eternal. There's always this. The universe is teeming with life, and we see it. We can see it under a microscope. We can see it when we gaze at the stars. It's from that very micro level to the immensity of the universe. So this biodiversity, everything that's living, and he could see that potentiality, and he could see this land as a place, that creative medium where this farm would manifest as a beautiful, life-giving place where they could have, they could be happy, they could be joyful, they could be peaceful, they could be fully engaged with life, and they could share that with the entire community. And now with this film, the entire world. So he held that vision for them, which is what a practitioner does. And I'm going to say, everyone who practices science of mind is a practitioner, whether you're a licensed practitioner or you're a lay practitioner. You are practicing these same principles. And this is ours, this is our birthright. And it's what we can use. And Ernest Holmes goes on to say, treatment is not willing things to happen. It is to provide within ourselves an avenue through which they may happen. Treatment opens up avenues of thought, expands the consciousness, and lets reality through. It clarifies the mentality, removes the obstruction of thought, and lets the light. It removes doubt and fear in the realization of the presence of spirit, and is necessary while we are confronted by obstructions or obstacles. We already live in a perfect universe, but it needs to be seen mentally before it can become a part of our experience. And it's important for us to realize, that we live in a perfect universe. We really do. And it's, I just like to sit with that for a second, just pondering that. We live in a perfect universe. Everything is working. Everything that has been in motion is working. It's working, and it's alive, and it's well. And we have to see it mentally before it can become a part of our experience. Now, John and Molly's practitioner mentor was holding this idea mentally. He already could see it. There was no doubt in his mind, none at all. None at all. And it wasn't a blind faith. It was already there, fully formed. He had 100% faith in the reality that this farm was perfection. Now, I want to just kind of go through this again. Oftentimes we think we have to will something to happen, and think about it. we can think about, probably come up with many examples of how we have, in our own lives, have tried to will something to happen, and from that alienated space, we're alienated from God, and we're just using our own will to try to make something happen. Now, um, I think a good example that comes up is, all of the 12-step programs. And the first thing that they say is, you can't really will this to happen. You can't really white knuckle any of this. You have to give it up to spirit or to a higher power to help you through this. And, I think that that is a realization that is essential. We're not willing it to happen. We can't make it happen by force. And this is exactly what Alan was teaching John and Molly, that they had to work with the land, and so that everything would work together in a healthy way. And, this farm, I think, can be a stand-in for any kind of condition that we may have in our lives. Because, this land that was barren and looked terrible really had pure potentiality in it. That potential was there. It was there. It was present. And one of the most important things about the film too is that even though what they were looking at, this condition, John and Mary had the seed of an idea of what they wanted. They came into this process with that seed. It could have been planted it was planted in them. I'm gonna leave it at that. It was planted already firmly in their consciousness that this is something that they were called to do. It was theirs to do. And they wanted to, when Molly talks about all of the things that she wanted in this world that she's creating, it actually came to fruition. All of the animals, all of the wonderful things that they had on this farm came to fruition. And, the mentor practitioner and Alan was the force that ignited this for them, that helped ignite this, because he held that vision. They were doing the work. He was helping them. And yet he already saw this full blown, right? He had the crystal clear vision of what it was, and they had the seed. So working together, it was sort of like he put the sunlight into this seed of a vision that they had. So they had so many challenges as they worked on this farm. And I want to give you one example because, I think that it's a really good example. There was something that was very, very successful early on in their farm, and that was their chickens. Their chickens were laying eggs, and they got lots of chickens, and they were selling like hotcakes, and it was creating a profit so they could put that back into the farm. And it was really kind of the heart of their farm early on, while they were waiting for the fruit trees and doing all this work that they needed to create this biodiversity. And they had a challenge with coyotes. And the coyotes started getting in and killing the chickens. And I think this was one of the most moving scenes in this movie, is that they were grappling with whether or not they were going to have to eradicate the coyotes. And they have, their mentor is telling them everything works together. Everything has its place. Everything is a part of this grand design. And you just have to take care of it for 7 years, and you're going to see the results of your care and your love for this land. Well, finally, he watches his beloved dog look at look that just sits quietly and looks at and observes what's going on. And he's doing this observation from a place of his dog just looks like it's observing. There's no judgment, there's nothing happening. It's calm, it's in observance. And he learns a lesson from this dog this way. He started to observe. And what he found, I'll shorten this story. What he found is that the coyotes, had a role to play. They had this infestation of gophers. And if they were able to allow the coyotes, protect the chickens, yes, but allow the coyotes to live, the coyotes were actually their friends. The gophers were eating everything. They were eating all these fruit trees that they planted. They were eating everything. But when the coyotes came in, they became one of the helpers that helped maintain that population so that they no longer had a problem. So what I'm saying in all of this, using this, is that there's absolutely nothing we have to will. We have to be willing to work with spirit to create what we want in our lives. And that's what treatment is all about. That's what we do when we are doing spiritual mind treatment. We are really treating our minds. We are using that faith 100% for our good. We're accepting our good. And we are holding that vision that is already there. That vision pulls us to it. It's not based on fear. We let go of fear and we are moved to that place where the vision pulls us. And where does the vision come from? The vision comes from spirit. So I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions or any comments right now. And, I'm just going to say, watch that film. There's so many lessons. In New Thought, okay, Roy, you say in traditional Christianity, they say you have to be worthy in order to be part of God or work with God. How is this viewed in New Thought? Well, and that's interesting, being born again first. Well, I think that, the way that we start, right, in New Thought is that there is a perfect God. Our conception of God is that angry, punishing God, and us as these poor sinners, unworthy of love, or, actually that we should be punished is erroneous, because if there is a perfect God, all of creation is perfect. So there isn't a question of our worth. We are those divine emanations of God. So that's what New Thought says. So this is, when I was talking about kind of the rise of New Thought and other ways of that Christianity was being iterated in the United States. I'm speaking about the U.S. right now. New Thought was basically new thought, a new thought. And I'm pointing to our heads. I think we think with our entire bodies, really. But new thought apprehended, caught that idea of the perfection of God and the perfection of all of its creation. So if there's any born again kind of idea here, uh, that is a new thought that is born, that revitalizes us to and really has us conform to that spiritual prototype in the mind of God. And this requires kind of an evolution of consciousness, um, that is shot through all of creation. And there's all kinds of different consciousnesses, and we could talk forever about this. But for human beings, for humanity, we are evolving so that we can understand spirit more fully. So the idea that we know as truth is there is a perfect God, there is perfect humanity, there is perfect creation. We are always worthy. We don't have to prove it. We don't have to do anything. You know, it's kind of like, giving your kids an allowance, right? An allowance is just because they're your kids, and they just get that allowance. There's no strings attached, right? So, I'm using kind of a funny example, but that's basically what it is. That's we don't have to be worthy. We already are worthy. We don't have to prove it. I guess proof is what I should say. We don't have to prove it. We're already worthy. So I hope that is satisfies your curiosity about that. Do we have any other questions, or anyone who would like to uh, shielding? Can you tell me a little bit more about shielding, Wayne? Maybe give me a little bit more about that. Oh, Roy, okay. You know, when we talk about change and new thought, we say, change your thinking, change your life. And what I've been talking about all morning is how we've changed our thinking about God. We need a new concept of God. And we are changing our thinking and changing our life by coming up with a new concept of God. And it's not that we're creating that concept, it's that we are actually uh, seeing who and what God is. And I talked about these, kind of an evolution of how we are seeing God. When we were uh, new, kind of a new species, the way that we understood life is much different than it is now. Uh, cause and effect is at work, and we see that in the Bible, that cause and effect is at work. People do certain things, and then there are consequences for those actions. And yet, we have, in the Bible, we have all kinds of um, scriptures that point to love, point to this incredible God that is always supporting us. So if there is any change that takes place, it's changing our concepts. And first of all, changing our concept of God, and that we are truly, truly, truly worthy no matter what. It's our birthright. And I can only use the idea of being a parent, and how it's hardwired into us, to care for our offspring. And we can look at nature and see that. We can see all of the animals taking care of their offspring, especially now. Go outside and just take a look. I have a pair of nesting owls in the palm outside my home, and oh, they take care of those babies so good, and they are present. They are showing love. They are, they, I know they are conscious about what they're doing, and that's what we're waking up to. So if there's an awakening, it's awakening and seeing life as it truly is, not based on fear, but based on this incredible gift that we have been given. And we are coming to the end of our time, and I just want to remind you that this is the New Thought Network. And, I always want to say, please support all of this work. You can donate. Reverend Robert will put up a donate button for us to look at where you can go to donate. And this programming, we are part of a team for this lecture series, and we want these ideas to get out into the world, especially because we need to know that we can change our thinking, we can change our lives, we can work together. We are those perfect beings created by this creative force that we call God. And we just have to step into that, realize it, and live our lives in that way. So next week, oh, thank you, Diego Reyes. It's so great to see you. And I know you're out there shining your light too. I love that. So thank you. So next week, we are moving into causes and conditions. And Robert, could you put up that slide? Do we have a slide for that? Causes and conditions next week. And we'll be here. I believe it's Dr. Ken next week. I'm hoping I'm giving the right name next week. May 1st. No, it's Reverend Robert. Sometimes I think I better put on my glasses, right? So it's Reverend Robert next week, May 1st, causes and conditions. So that will be a wonderful, wonderful talk, I know. And I'll be here. I watch it and I love being a part of this team. And I know that as you go about your week, that you've been given food for thought, and that you'll pick up your Science of Mind textbook and reread that chapter and even get more out of it. We can never read it too much. And whatever sacred text that you might be a part of, it will enhance your understanding of those sacred texts as well. So have a wonderful week. And I am knowing that joy and happiness and peace are yours. So have a great day.